Hello, everyone. Welcome to Therapy Clips with Dr. O. I'm from the organization Human Service Consultants. Today, our topic will focus on the models of substance addiction. The very first model that I will discuss with you is the moral model. In this model, many religious institutions view alcohol or drug behavior as sinful or a spiritual defect. It is viewed as a will violation of societal rules. It suggests that alcohol or addictive behavior infringes on others and should be a punishable crime. So, what is said is that alcoholism is a sin and heroin addiction or addiction to other drugs is a crime. What is also being said by this model, which is the moral model once again, that there is a spiritual defect and a lack of personal responsibility in anyone who becomes addicted to any substance. So, what do they imply to be the intervention? How can this problem be addressed? It is suggested that spiritual direction, moral persuasion, and social sanctions can help to cure substance addiction. Well, in this model, it can be that spiritual direction, moral sanctions, and social sanctions can have a positive effect. So, example is receiving spiritual direction by attending AA meetings and A meetings and engaging in church activities, moral persuasion, also working on responsibility and understanding the role that the individual play in society, and that responsibility of not only taking care of themselves but taking care of themselves for the family and community. But the social sanctions was once just criminal charges, incarceration, and being engaged in court activities and the sentence that the judge would impose upon that individual. So I'm moving now to the next model. The next model is the temperance perspective. The temperance movement arose in the late 19th century and lasted until the repeal of the prohibition in 1933. It emphasized moderation and the cautious use of alcohol. Alcohol was seen as a hazardous drug with the potential for inflicting harm. The temperance movement then grew into the prohibition movement. The belief was that nobody could drink in moderation, and abstinence was viewed as the only alternative. In 1919, the 18th Amendment to the Constitution proposed that the manufacture, sale, transportation, and importation of alcohol were criminal acts. The law was repealed in 1933 by the 21st Amendment because it was so much crime from people like Bugsy Malone in the streets, and there was bloody warfare because of territory, and also people just wanted to drink, and they made their voice known about the topic. So the causal factor in all of this is alcohol. So what was the intervention? The intervention was exhortation. So this means just giving a strong warning against alcohol use. Also, it was advocated that abstinence and prohibition would, in fact, be the intervention for excessive alcohol use. Who were the intervention agents? It was the abstainers, people who decided that they weren't going to drink alcohol at all, and legislators. Now I'm moving into the disease model of substance addiction. In this particular model, alcoholism and other addictions is seen as unique and progressive conditions, or in other words, a disease. The belief is that anyone who is with a substance use disorder is incapable of using alcohol or any other drugs in moderation. The disease is believed to be irreversible. The individual cannot be cured, but the disease can be arrested if the person totally abstains from any addictive substance. So, who are the people who actually believe in this model? It is growing in popularity now, but it was just at one point the belief of people like members of AA and NA, so Alcoholics Anonymous and Narcotics Anonymous. But now it is widespread the belief that addiction to any substance is a disease. So what is the causal factor? And this I need to explain to you a little deeply so that you don't be confused by what you hear, but it's the abnormality of the individual. So what they're saying is that people who have a substance use disorder is abnormal. Now, this is where I need to get a little deep so that you can understand how this logic has come about. Basically, the idea is that the vast majority of Americans are not addicted to a substance. Even though you may read the literature and the literature reflects that we have millions and millions of people who are addicted to substance, it's just a small percentage in comparison to the entire population of people who live in the United States. So that's why it's seen as abnormal. So the intervention is first to identify it and then it be confronted. So family members, friends will confront certain people on their drinking behavior, their drug use behavior, and then help this person to get into treatment, hopefully. And the idea behind the intervention is that there will be lifelong abstinence. I'm moving forward to talk about the intervention agents. And who are the intervention agents? Recovering people. People in Alcoholics Anonymous, Narcotics Anonymous, Cocaine Anonymous, and all of the other 12-step programs. These individuals give peer support, but other people in the community, like therapists and counselors and psychologists and psychiatrists, psychiatric nurses, social workers, are also giving support to individuals with substance use disorder. Moving forward, this particular model that I will discuss with you now is called the education model. The education model is with this basic assumption. Problems evolve from the knowledge deficits and from the lack of accurate information about substance use. The belief is that when individuals are presented with appropriate and effective information about the hazards or the risks of substances, they will moderate or stop their alcohol and or drug use. And this information is given in presentations like I'm doing right now, but also in lectures and other forms of effective communication, such as educational pamphlets, fact sheets, websites that talk about the different drugs of abuse and give you the health effects of short-term and long-term substance abuse. Moving forward. So the causal factor is believed to be a lack of knowledge and a lack of motivation. So the intervention I just mentioned is education. The belief is the more people know about what these drugs and this alcohol will do to their bodies, they will slow down use or abstain from this particular type of behavior. And who's giving this information out? Educators and people who work in treatment programs and prevention type of programs. I am now getting ready to approach another model. This is called the characterological or personality model. In this particular model, AOD use is rooted in the abnormalities of the individual. So it was once thought that these particular individuals had an addictive personality. Well, there is no such thing as an addictive personality. The literature now refutes that particular premise that there is an addictive personality. That is no more the thinking. Now the thinking is now that the belief is that there are inadequate defenses and the inability to resolve problems related to their personalities and their behaviors. So the behavioral traits associated with alcohol and drug use is this: low self-esteem, sex role conflicts, difficulty in coping with stress, problems and frustration tolerance, passive dependent personalities and patterns of behaviors, egocentricities with the demanding and the manipulative behaviors associated with the ego, a drive for power and control by those who feel helpless and without power. So, the entire causal factor lies in personality traits, disposition, inadequate defenses, difficulty in impulse control, antisocial personality, problems with frustration tolerance, manipulative and demanding behavior, and the feeling that they have a lack of power. So, what are the interventions? The interventions lie in treatment, psychotherapy, risk identification, self-image or self-concept modification, interpersonal skills that focus on impulse control, alternative responses to frustration, and improved defense, and also dependency reduction. Who's doing this work? Psychotherapists, social workers, counselors, psychiatrists, psychologists, psychiatric nurses are all working to help people to understand their behaviors that's related to substance use disorders. I am now moving into the next model. The next model is called the conditioning perspective. In this perspective, there is speculation that learning and conditioning processes lie at the heart of alcohol and drug use problems. The belief is that alcohol and drug use is a learned habit. Some principles could be applied to help substance use disordered individuals to unlearn behaviors and habits. Moving forward, the causal factor is that individuals have been conditioned to respond to behaviors that I just mentioned in the behavioral traits and alcohol and drug use. They are being reinforced by the alcohol or drug use. So in other words, anything that feels good to the individual, they will repeat the behavior and become reinforced by the positive feelings, the stress reduction that is associated with their issues. Who is the conditioning perspective agents? Who's working on these issues? Behavioral therapists. And what are they doing? They are re-teaching people so that issues can be identified and solved without alcohol and drug use. And there is counter conditioning and relearning. Moving forward into the next model. The next model is the biomedical perspective. In this particular perspective, the idea is that there is genetic and physiological processes that are involved in alcohol and drug use, substance addiction, and just the plain abuse of substances. Now, these ideas are emerging because of the studies that are being done by places like Johns Hopkins University and other researchers, including myself. The idea is that adoption studies, twin studies, genetic marker studies can focus on heredity, the brain, and biochemistry to understand how addiction works and how it, I wouldn't say attack, but people fall victim because of their genetic endowment. So the causal factor is the genes, whether or not the individuals carry certain genes for certain things like alcoholism, drug addiction. And so all of this information is within that individual and the identification of genes. So our primary idea in working with individuals who have substance use disorder is that we first need to identify those individuals who are at risk. And then, if we find that they are at risk, then put certain interventions in place to help this individual to gain sobriety and hopefully stay on the road of recovery. This is done through medical treatment, but not only medical treatment, psychotherapy, and other forms of treatment. So who's doing this work? Physicians, psychiatrists, social workers, and other licensed clinicians. Moving forward into the social, cultural, and psychological model. In this particular model, the focus is on factors like culture, religion, family, peer variables, and psychological factors. What is being said is that the environment and cultural situations can contribute to drug addiction and alcoholism. The family environment and patterns can predispose children to alcoholism. In this model, psychological explanations also exist. It is believed that alcohol and drug use is secondary to other problems in the person's life. So individuals who are with a substance use disorder will begin to use particular substances to assuage the emotional pain experienced by the individual. Now I'm getting ready to approach a different model. This model is called the social learning model. In this particular model, individuals are believed to have developed a category of bad habits that include drinking, gambling, smoking, overeating, sexual addiction. So, the alcohol and substance use is initiated by environmental stressors or models in the environment. This is reinforced by the immediate effects of alcohol or drug use on feelings generated by stressors or the recognition of models with perceived status. And so, basically, what I have gone through in this presentation to help you to understand why substance use, in fact, exists in some people and not in others. The models is just explaining the different perspectives from which clinicians and therapists look to find the answers to work with individuals with substance use disorders. How professors like myself also teach my students how to understand so that when they're working with people, they know different approaches to take in order to help individuals with substance use disorders understand the severity of the substance use and the addiction. This is Dr. O from Human Service Consultants bringing you another therapy clip on the different types of models that can affect individuals with substance use disorders. As always, I'd like to thank you for listening to the presentation. I want you to not only love someone, but please love yourself enough to recognize that you, in fact, have a substance use disorder. And with that substance use disorder, you need to be very careful and take responsibility for your particular disease. And by taking responsibility, you are to understand that you are to work each and every day, every second, every minute, and every hour of the day to stay sober, clean, and on the road of recovery. Thank you and have a blessed day.